Hi everyone, it is that time already for another monthly channel update and Patreon Q&A. So, wow, October went by really fast, as it often does, at least for me, because I love October. Halloween's my favorite holiday. I love getting hyped up for it. I love watching scary movies. This year, on the Sunday before Halloween, the last day of Hallow weekend, I watched 4 movies in a day. That's how I roll. So October always goes by really fast. Also, it helps that it's actually probably the nicest month weather-wise here in the DC area. The humidity typically has sort of dropped off by October. It's cool at night, so you can sleep with the windows open, and it's warm during the day, so like I can still wear shorts and when I bike into the office and everything. So it went by in a blur, and we're in November already, and before you know it, it's going to be Christmas time and then the end of the year. But before we get to any of that stuff, the update, of course, if you're a Patreon supporter, you're going to be seeing this before Extra Life. So hey, reminder, Extra Life is this Saturday, November 11th, at least for us. The official playdate was actually last week, the 4th. We're playing on the 11th this year because Anthony was out of town and we wanted everybody to be able to come over and participate. So Eric is coming down, Mike is coming down from Canada, Kurt and Anthony live in the area. They will be here, right here in my apartment for Extra Life this Saturday, November 11th. If you're seeing this after it's been posted publicly, then probably Extra Life already happened, and there's probably a bunch of video highlights of it like on the channel, on the YouTube channel, so check those out, I guess. But you can still give until the end of the year, so if you missed that and you still want to give, you can give. Regular channel business. I am hard at work right now on the Metal Gear Solid episode, which has literally an episode 5 years in the making. Somewhere on an old DV tape, no, it would have been after the DV tape era, but somewhere I have like most of a playthrough of the PlayStation Metal Gear Solid on, but captured through my Dazzle, which did not capture high quality footage. So I replayed about half of Metal Gear Solid for the PlayStation to get game footage. I've beaten the game many times. I got the tuxedo at one point, so that tells you. I think you have to play through the game at least 3 or 4 times to get the tuxedo. So I got the tuxedo, so that should tell you something. So I played through that game a lot of times. So I just replayed enough to get some footage of the really memorable moments and some of the cool stuff, and talk about it. Next, I'll be playing the Game Boy Color version, scripting and editing, and all that stuff will probably happen next week. So I anticipate it to go up. I anticipate doing most of the work on it the weekend between Extra Life and Thanksgiving. So it should go up Thanksgiving week is my estimation. And then I actually haven't really landed on what the second video this month is going to be, so I guess we'll see on that one. But there's going to be either an episode of 5 Reasons or an Obscure Games before the end of November as well. I've got a couple of ideas that I'm sort of bouncing back and forth between, so we'll see what happens there. And then December, we're going to finish up the Mega Maniversary. And I really haven't gotten into planning next year. Oh, also, going back to Extra Life stuff, if you want a request for an episode, you can give $50 to the Extra Life campaign, and you will get a request for an episode of Same Name Different Game or Obscure Games or 5 Reasons, but usually I think most people are most interested in Same Name Different Game. And that is usually 60 if you're at that tier on the Patreon. You have to give at the $10 level for a few months, and so you're saving a little bit of money and giving the money to charity. So if that's the thing you're interested in, you should do that. That's about it in terms of the immediate future of the channel. Recently we crested 2,500 subscribers, and we are rolling pretty quickly towards 3,000, which is great. That would not be possible without your support. So yeah, I don't know. Halloween videos, I think, went over. There's always this thing of I can never figure out what is going to connect with either people or like the YouTube algorithm, because like the Mega Man 5 video really outperformed my expectations. But then the Marvel vs. Capcom video and now the Friday the 13th video didn't really perform as well as I'd sort of hoped they would, which, you know, not the end of the world. I'm not doing this for raw view numbers, but I always find it interesting to see kind of what people are responding to. Also, it was a big relief for me to do the Halloween same name different game first, to sort of front load it, because usually it's the one I do last, which kind of puts the pressure on to have it done by Halloween. But knowing that it was Friday the 13th, I wanted to have it posted on Friday the 13th, of course, and that made it a lot easier to have that done early. And then, you know, the editing process, the whole process really for Obscuro Games and 5 Reasons is a lot lighter than Same Name Different Game, which is why there's always, you know, one Same Name Different Game and one of something else, because the other shows are a much lower lift, generally speaking. Although I have been toying with the idea of 1 month doing a very light Same Name Different Game, and then having the Obscuro Games episode be like a much bigger episode about, there's one game that I'm kind of thinking of that would be a much bigger, fuller episode of that show, contrasted with a simpler episode of Same Name Different Game. So, but who knows? So yeah, and that's about it for channel update stuff. Let's go to the questions. So I usually start with Tony, but I'm going to start with Joel this month. There's only 2 people who ask questions, and there are other people who can ask questions. If you have questions, please let me know, or if you're watching this after it's been posted publicly and you want to know how can I ask a question, go to the Patreon page, and for $5 per video, you can ask a question for the segment, and I will answer it. So Joel wants to know, what's the weirdest or most pointless change you've ever seen in a port? So weirdest and most pointless are, I think, kind of 2 different questions. The weirdest change, I think, would always be something with music. So there's a couple of examples I can think of. The PC Engine CD version of Double Dragon 2, the music is like not just weird arrangements of the songs that were already in there, which are good, but is just totally different music, and it's bad. It's pretty bad. And the same with like Ninja Gaiden. The music on the PC Engine version, I don't know what is the PC Engine in these cases, but the PC Engine version of Ninja Gaiden, so the Super Nintendo version of Ninja Gaiden is just weird arrangements and weird instrumentation of the existing music. And it really is. Just the instrumentation they chose is bizarre. Like why you would go with a xylophone, like for some of those songs, I'm just like, this is like an intense driving beat, and like in the NES it's got a very bassy feel. Like I would think that it would be sort of a you know, electric bass type of feel for you know the song I'm thinking of. I'll put a bit of it in here, the original NES version here. Okay, so that song is like xylophone in the Super NES version, and that sounds like it should be like a electric bass or electric guitar driving rock song, and like they decided no, xylophone. But the PC Engine version is not even arrangements of those existing songs. Like maybe one, I'm trying to remember now because that episode was so long ago. I think like the act intro and stuff like that is the same. The that's the same. None of the music is the same besides that, and it's bad. It's bad music. So that's the weirdest. The most pointless change that I can think of, it depends on how you define pointless. Like it's easy to say, like in the Super Nintendo version of Mortal Kombat, they took out the blood, which makes the game kind of pointless. Or like, oh, in the NES version of Metal Gear, they changed it so that you're supposed to have an iron glove to punch the walls. Like there's a section in the basement in the original Metal Gear where you have to punch the walls to see if they can be blown up. And in the NES version, they add an item called the Iron Glove, which you're supposed to find and use, except it doesn't do anything. Like if you just punch the walls without it, it still makes the sound that tells you can blow up the wall. So there's literally no reason to add that item because it doesn't work anyways. That is probably the most pointless change. So in the MSX version, there is no glove, and when you punch the walls, it makes the noise. In the NES, they added the glove, but it does nothing. So, that's the most pointless. Joel also asks, when you play fighting games, do you make it a habit to play the same character in playthroughs of each version, or do you use a different character for playthroughs on differing versions? I usually try to play through the whole game as the same character when I cover fighting games, and if you go back and watch the fighting game episodes I've done. So obviously with Marvel vs. Capcom, like it's part of the Mega Man thing, so I played through with Mega Man. But even in games that aren't Marvel vs. Capcom, I try to play through as the same character all the time, just because then like the endings and stuff, you can compare the endings and have like for like. So if you watch like Mortal Kombat 2, I played through as Sub-Zero for the most part, so that you can then see, you know, like for like of this is what Sub-Zero's ending looks like here, this is what it looks like here, so you're not comparing kind of apples to oranges. So I do try to play through as the same character, but I also try to get footage of other characters generally. Obviously in the first Mortal Kombat video, since the fatalities are so different, I did everybody's fatality so that you can see those. And I should actually probably like clip that out and make it its own YouTube video, because I feel like people would watch that, but yeah. Joel asks, any old franchises you'd like to see make a comeback? That one is super easy, and it is the Demon's Crest, Gargoyles Quest, Makaimura Gaiden, whatever you want to call it, the Firebrand games. And they keep, or the Ghouls and Ghosts games, really, because there hasn't been a Ghouls and Ghosts game in like a decade at this point. But yeah, those games are, I think, that Capcom could really come back with a new one of those in a modern, as like a downloadable title, a 2D downloadable title, and do some really excellent things with that franchise. Now, I also recognize that is not a super popular like the Gargoyle games are a subset of a franchise that in the modern era is not super popular as it stands. So I'm not like holding my breath, but if I had all the money or, you know, whatever. He wants to know, do you have a favorite or least favorite genre to look over in same name, different game? My least favorite, well, so that really just translates to what are my favorite game genres, I think. I don't know that I think that the games that I like are the games that I'm drawn to doing episodes on, generally speaking, unless they're just games that I find interesting. So, which is pretty rare that I would find a game interesting outside of my normal wheelhouse. You know, so I don't really like RPGs in general. It depends, and it depends on your definition of RPG and blah, blah, blah. But like JRPGs especially, like I'm not, they just don't do it for me anymore. They did when I was a kid, and they don't anymore. And I've sort of addressed this before, but like it's unlikely you're going to see that just because it's time consuming and I'm not really super into playing them. I do like, you know, old school action platformers. I like stealth action games. And so doing that kind of stuff is fun. Anything that I can really highlight the differences on is usually a good one. And sometimes you end up doing really similar games. You know, so like Spider-Man X-Men is so similar. The versions are almost identical. That, you know, that was interesting in another way, just to say like, look at how similar these games are. You know, they're nearly identical, and that really shows off that the power of both of those systems. People make blanket statements about the Super NES is more powerful, and that just is not accurate. And so when a game is super similar, it kind of gives off that vibe and makes that point. He says, a little late for this one, but what are some of your all-time favorite horror movies? Yeah, so that's a Halloween thing, but horror movies are evergreen. You can watch horror movies at any time of the year, and that is part of why Halloween is better than Christmas. Because you can't watch Christmas movies at any time of the year. Although I guess you can't watch Christmas themed horror movies like Black Christmas or the remake of Black Christmas. But all-time favorite horror movies, the two that I would say just off the cuff are, in terms of serious, straight-laced, just nail-biting terror, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. In terms of, you know, a little more levity, a little more splatter, Evil Dead 2 is legit one of my all-time favorite films. Like, both of those are probably in my top 10 favorite films, period. Those are films that if I could, you know, if I could put Evil Dead 2 in the, you know, National Film Registry for preservation by the Library of Congress, I would do it, because that movie is perfect, or as perfect, as close to perfect as a film can be. So Tony asks, she starts by saying, your October content was really awesome this year. Thank you, Tony. She starts with, do you approve of yams with marshmallows on top as a Thanksgiving dish? Not only do I approve of sweet potatoes and marshmallows in like a weird casserole as a Thanksgiving dish, I advocate for sweet potatoes and marshmallows as a Thanksgiving dish. She wants to know, have you ever, or do you plan to someday try a cherpumple? So the cherpumple, if you're not familiar, cherpumple is a portmanteau of cherry, apple, pumpkin, and it is the turducken of desserts. It is a cherry pie, an apple pie, and a pumpkin pie baked into a cake. And it was like a running joke on the old Action Cast podcast that we used to do, which was about action movies. And I don't even remember how, I think Alex found it or looked it up or read about it somewhere, and then it turned into, you know, people say like, oh, this movie has layers, or this person has layers like an onion, you have to peel the layers off. And that turned into, it has layers like a cherpumple. No, I actually don't think if I was somewhere where like that was a thing that was in front of my face, I guess I would probably have to, but I certainly don't ever plan on going out of my way to eat a cherpumple, because it actually sounds pretty gross. Last question. Tony says, I got my first tattoo last month, and I'd love to hear anything you'd be willing to share about yours. How many games are represented in your sleeve? What tattoo is your first, etc. So yeah, I can tell you some things about my tattoos. This would be a really long video if I told you everything about my tattoos, so let's keep it brief. My first tattoo is on my right ankle, and it was a Chinese character, and I am told it stands for friendship. I don't read Chinese, and in hindsight that was like maybe not the best idea, but it was 2001. It was early 2001. It was January of 2001, and I was 18 years old, and at that time, like, Asian script was super cool in tattoos. I mean, it probably still is, but like, yeah. So it means a lot to me because myself and two of my friends who went into the Navy and who I'm still friends with, one of whom I ended up living with for many years after I was out of college and he was out of the Navy. They're matching. The three of us went and got them together in Madison, Wisconsin at Blue Lotus Tattoo, which I assume is still there because it was a pretty good parlor. I don't know if it is though, because I haven't been to Madison in many years. But that was my first. You know, I don't, maybe next month ask some more pointed questions about them, because I have a lot of tattoo stories. I have a lot of tattoos. I have this is a full sleeve. It goes all the way up to my shoulder. I have stuff under here. I have stuff on both of my legs. I have one on my stomach. I have a lot of tattoos. As far as how many games are represented, I used to know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I don't now. It's more than 40 and less than 50. That I can tell you are represented on my arm. Although it's more than 40 and less than 50 characters. Not sure about the number of actual games though, because thinking about it, Mario, Luigi, and Bowser are on the sleeve, so that's really like one game series that's represented. There are 2 Final Fantasy characters, which sounds weird because I just said I don't really like JRPGs, but part of it is nostalgia, which I don't. When I try to look at a game, I really don't. I try to avoid the nostalgia thing, but when it came to this art, there is a lot of nostalgia there. Sonic is on there, and like I really haven't liked a Sonic game since Sonic 3 and Knuckles. But those games and those memories mean a lot to me, and I think the design is cool, and also it's like old school, like pudgy Sonic. So, so there are series represented here, multiple times. So number of games represented, hard to say, around 40, I guess I would say. And yeah, this started as a half sleeve. So it went up to here, and it was done as far as I was concerned. And then I was going to start doing the other arm and do something different on the other arm, which you can see there is no half sleeve here. I was going to do something here, and I really hadn't reached a strong decision about what that was going to be. I have a plan for this arm. I just have not executed it yet because tattoos are expensive, and I want to finish this one. But so since that was the case, then I decided to go all the way up with this one, and it's still not done. The problem is I moved to the DC area and my artist moved to Portland, Oregon, and so now it is very difficult to sync up and get work done. So I need to go see Rachel. Her name is Rachel Gilbert. She tattoos at No Hope No Fear Studio in Portland, Oregon. If you're in the area, you should look into her work because she is fantastic and worth every penny. But yeah, so this still needs to be finished, and hopefully that will happen in the next year or two, really. I would like to get it done and off the plate in the next year or two, and then find a local artist to do what I have planned for this arm, which I'm not going to talk about right now. So yeah, and then I guess the only other thing that is sort of interesting about my tattoos is that I have two band tattoos. I have an Alkaline Trio tattoo. They're one of my favorite bands, and I have a Misfits tattoo, which they are also, at least their stuff with Danzig, and in particular, you know, like Static Age, you know, Walk Among Us, you know, that stuff. You know, really, really good stuff. That one actually has a bit more of a story to it. It matches one that my wife and a friend of ours has. So there's a little bit more to that story, which I'm not going to tell right now because I feel like I've already been rambling about my tattoos for too long. So yeah, that's it. If you're watching this before November 11th, please, on November 11th, go and check out our Extra Life stream, twitch.tv/onthestick. That will be happening all day on November 11th into November 12th. And if you're watching this afterwards, check out some of the archive stuff on the YouTube channel. And if you want to ask questions like these, go to patreon.com/same name different game, and you too can help me out in terms of production costs and then ask me questions, which I will answer in this format.